And we're back here on Sports Talk. A lot of people in El Paso right now, Monster. They are excited about what's coming up on Sunday morning with the CBS Sports Network documentary on Texas Western. They're calling it Champions of Change. And hard to believe that just 3 weeks ago they recorded this at Memorial Gym, and now they've turned it around into the documentary.
I'm amazed how fast they were able to put this together, and I can't wait for Sunday morning to watch this. I really can't.
Joining us right now on our Village Inn hotline, where all of our guests always appear, is Jack Ford. He is a man that was, I guess, really you could say lucky enough, because this was probably a job that a lot of people would have loved to have had the opportunity to do, but he moderated and conducted the panel interview at Memorial Gym 3 weeks ago, and in fact will be hosting Champions of Change when CBS Sports Network airs this at 10 o'clock on Sunday. Jack, good to have you on the phone lines right now, back here in El Paso, and I know I say lucky enough, but you tell me, after going through the taping and being in El Paso to talk to these guys, what was that experience like for you?
You know, Steve, the fortunate thing for me over the years in my career, I've done a lot of news and I've done some sports things. You know, I've gotten to interview presidents and national world leaders and movie stars and sports stars. It's fun for me. You know, I was a college football player. I've stayed involved doing things with the NCAA. It's always fun for me when I can dive into some of the great sports stories. And when my friends at CBS Sports said to me, "Would you want to be part of this project?" I basically said, "You can't keep me from being part of this project." You know, I remember watching this game. I was a young kid in high school, played football, basketball in high school. And I remember watching this game, and the interesting thing about it, and it's funny because I talked to so many of the players, and they said the same thing. With the clarity of hindsight, as we look back on this through the prism of 50 years of civil rights struggle, people back then were not looking at it the way we do today. I mean, I remember watching the game thinking, wow, that's pretty cool. You know, the Kentucky team that's really good, Pat Riley, Louis Dampier, and look at these guys coming out of El Paso. You know, Texas Western, they play a fun brand of basketball. I don't remember thinking, you know, what an enormous event this was going to be, because of the fact that the Texas Western guys were all black, and the Kentucky guys, the entire team was all white. And so, for me to be able to go back in time to visit this, and to sit down and talk with these guys, these players, you know, David Latt and Neville Shedd and Willie Worsley, you know, and names I vividly remember watching them play. It was very exciting for me, and one of the more rewarding projects that I've ever done, actually, in my journalism career.
And it sounds like you did your research, having a chance to experience this, and you mentioned living this when you were in high school and watching the game. You know, it's really interesting. When Glory Road came out 10 years ago, we were all, wrapped up in the project, and we were looking for the actual televised version of this game. It doesn't exist because none of the networks actually broadcast it. It was an independent, syndicated network that had, I guess, different channels around the country pick it up, but anybody could have aired the game, and even here in El Paso, nobody recorded it. None of the stations recorded it and saved it. So all we have left is a coach's scouting tape with a radio call synced to it. And that just tells you, even in 1966, as big as this game was, the significance, nobody thought about it at the time.
Yeah, and it's so hard for us today, Steve, to envision the notion that there's not a tape of it someplace. You know, nowadays, there's something everywhere that you do. And when we were struggling to put this together, and I know they had, in the past, when people looked at this, they've lamented the fact that it's not there. As you said, I saw it on a delayed tape. And for people now who realize how big the Final Four is, it's almost inexplicable to try to get people to understand. You know, 50 years ago, it wasn't the same. You know, so as you said, different stations carried it on a syndicated basis. And it's funny how often that happens. I had executive produced for CBS Sports a couple of years ago a documentary about the 1963 Army-Navy game, which was a major game in the history. It was played right after the assassination of President Kennedy. You know, it was an important part of the healing process for the nation. It also didn't exist. CBS Sports couldn't find it. Nobody kept it. So, you know, trying to cobble this together, as you said, we got a little bit of film, we got a radio call that gave us some sound here. But one of the fun things I did is I sat down with David Ladden and Neville Shedd, and we looked at some game tape, what we had. And I asked him, what was going on in your mind? David Ladden, when you dunked over Pat Riley in the first minute of the game, and that's kind of unfair because he really didn't dunk on Pat Riley the way we think of it now. Pat Riley was the back guy in a 1-3-1 zone, and he just got over a little bit late. Great pass by Bobby Joe Hill into David Ladden, and he dunked it. But the myth has become that he dunked it over Pat Riley, and Pat has always had a good sense of humor about it. But to be able to talk with those guys, saying, what were you thinking then? And why did you do that? David Ladden said that Coach Haskins said to him, the first time you get your hands on the ball, I don't care where you are, I don't care who's guarding you, I don't care if you have to travel to do it, I want you to throw a dunk down. I want to send a message to these guys. So again, being able to get inside of their mind, that their recollection was just fascinating.
Jack Ford with us again on our Village Inn hotline as we continue here on Sports Talk. 1966 Texas Western Champions of Change will debut and air on CBS Sports Network this Sunday morning at 10 o'clock here in El Paso as we continue our conversation. So we were on the air 3 weeks ago Friday doing our normal show when you were out at Memorial Gym recording the feature, which was taped in front of a live audience out there at Memorial. For people that were there witnessing this and will they get a chance to see the final result, I mean, how difficult was it, Jack, to try to condense all of that into a 1 hour special?
You guys are on the air, and the reality is the people that are on the air, the correspondents, the anchors, our sense is always, no, you can't cut anything. This was all great. And it becomes the task of the producers and the editors to somehow get this down to a manageable time frame. We had literally hours of great content to do. But we wanted to weave in, that spending time at Memorial Gym with him, which was really cool. The fact that we're sitting in the gym with these guys playing with them 50 years later. So we wanted to weave real conversations with them, and we broke them into sort of small groups. And we talked about specific subjects. What was the atmosphere like before the game in your locker room? Did you look at this as a major step in the battle for civil rights? All those little subjects we talked about. And then we wanted to weave that into some other, film and conversations. Pat Riley was kind enough to sit down with us and provide us some of his great thoughts about this. So we had so much great material trying to get it down to a manageable 1 hour special. It's always the hardest thing to do. But I think people will be very happy when they look at it. First of all, the people who know the story, I think will be thrilled just to see it being told again. And as much fun as Glory Road was, and it was a great movie, but this is now the real guy talking about. So I think people who know the story will love it, and those who don't, I think, will be drawn into it immediately, and they're going to understand what a momentous event this was.
Jack, after the special airs on Sunday, is there any way that it'll be available for purchase, the unedited, like the full hours that you guys recorded 3 weeks ago?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that they've decided yet. It will air. We air a number of times during the course of the next month or so on the CBS Sports Network. And I know that our hosts at UTEP, and by the way, they were just wonderful. The president of the university, the athletic director, everybody just really jumped in and to make this a significant and important event. And I know there's some conversation about how can we make this available to the community. So I'm fairly certain there's going to be some mechanism to do it. I apologize. I don't know yet how that's going to happen.
We're talking to Jack Ford here as we continue on Sports Talk. I think what's fascinating to me about this documentary is we've had other documentaries produced on the 66 team in the past, and we've seen the in-depth looks, but we've never quite had it where you've arranged it to have the round table discussion or on the couch when you had everybody sitting there in such a nice atmosphere watching the tapes, talking about the game like that. I think, Chuck, probably that's where this is going to stand out from some of the other features and specials that have been done on the team in the past.
Steve, I hope so. That was our thought when we sat down months and months, probably a year ago, and started talking about how should we recognize this 50th anniversary. And, we realized there have been documentaries done, and some have been very good. But we wanted to do something a little bit different. So this is not going to look like your classic documentary. classic documentary style shoot is you never see the person asking the questions, you never hear the questions. Basically, you hear the person responding, and you interweave some film with all of that. So we took some elements of that, but we also, as you said, we thought maybe the best component of this would be this conversation, making a conversation amongst these guys, and not only the players, Bo Iba, who was the assistant coach at the time, the gentleman who was the sports information director. We have a great historian who is a professor, interestingly enough, from the University of Kentucky. Gerald Smith is a professor, history professor there. He has a specialization in civil rights. He teaches great courses there. And I had come across Gerald in the past when I produced last year for CBS Sports a documentary about integrating the SEC for football. And so we thought, what a great addition to have him part of the conversation. He's African American. He's from the University of Kentucky, curiously, and he has studied this, from afar as a historian. So our hope is, Steve, as you said, our hope is that adding this component to it will make it different and perhaps give a different heft to it. And I think what I've seen of the finished product, I think we're going to be successful with that.
Now, we know here in El Paso just how important that win was and really what that did for not only the landscape of college basketball, but here in El Paso with Don Haskins and that 66 team. But on the flip side, you look at the effect that had on Kentucky basketball. Number one, they don't like to talk about that game, that loss, and it's really interesting that as all these specials have come around in these documentaries, it's really a painful game for so many diehard Wildcat fans that just don't want to keep bringing this up.
What's really interesting about that, Steve, what we discovered, the players themselves, the Kentucky players themselves, and again, the Texas Western players at the time, they didn't go into this thinking that this was a battle between black and white, between segregation and integration. When you talk to all of them, both guys said this was a basketball game. The Texas Western guys said, we wanted to beat Kentucky not because of who they were, because we wanted to win a national championship. And Kentucky says, we didn't want to beat Texas Western again because of who they were or the color of their skin. We wanted to beat it because we wanted to win a championship. Now, you're not going to get the same responses from a lot of people on the outside of that. This is clearly, and we have a couple of the Kentucky players here, the Kentucky players have always exhibited great respect for the Texas Western guys, and the Texas Western guys have always reciprocated. You got essentially the vilification of Texas Western from outsiders. Maybe people who were affiliated with the University of Kentucky, people who lived in Kentucky, maybe just hardcore segregationists and racists at the time. And as you said, Kentucky doesn't embrace this, and for good reasons. Look, they lost the national championship. But I was very pleased how the Kentucky players were willing to contribute to this, and the great degree of respect that they exhibited for not only the game, but for the Texas Western players themselves.
Can't wait to watch it Sunday morning, Champions of Change on the CBS Sports Network, as Jack Ford's been kind enough to join us on our Village Inn hotline. Jack, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much for sharing some of your memories, and we'll look forward to watching on Sunday morning.
My pleasure, guys, and I got to tell you, I loved my trip to El Paso. I'll look forward to coming back again.
We'll look forward to having you back.
Thanks, Jack.
Jack Ford here as we continue on Sports Talk.